was India enabled to be self-sufficient? And if you see that, in earlier system, it was a decentralized form of administration before the British came over. And we had the Panchayat Raj, and what it meant was every village would generate its produce, its wealth, trade it, generate wealth, and deploy the wealth themselves, within themselves, for whatever they thought was important to them from their local perspective. And a small portion of it was shared with the king of the land. Then when you come to the word guru itself, it comes from the root gur. Gur meaning to lift up, to pull up, uplift, and so on. And and also to attract. Gurutva akarshana is to attract. And from this is where you get the word gravity. The English word gravity, the science, the word gravity in physics has both its concept as well as the sound rooted in Gurutva Akarshana. And it shows the ability to attract due to pull, which comes from heaviness, therefore weight. So a guru is somebody who is heavy with wisdom, laden with wisdom, and he draws people towards him or her with his knowledge, with his words, with his leadership, and shows people the way of dharma. So while one pulls people out of the crisis and one shows them how to live, the guru shows dharma and also gives them the mental strength to be able to live in harmony both amongst themselves and with nature.
And one of the important aspects for all the PMG, Prajapati, Manu and Guru, is to keep up the enthusiasm of the people in times of hardships. It's very important to keep up the enthusiasm. And this is aptly explained when the Prime Minister spoke last time. He used this quote very in an apt manner, where he quotes from the Ramayana, Kishkita Kandam, where when Rama is dejected after Sita has been kidnapped, it's at that time Lakshmana speaks about what is important, about how enthusiasm is important. Nothing is impossible if you have the enthusiasm. It's not just hope, it's more than hope. Hope is just hope something may happen. No. But with enthusiasm, you can make things happen. That's important. So it's beyond hope, which is what the Western thought always speaks about, whereas enthusiasm is more important. And it is only with that you can rise up to the occasion and achieve. It's only that a good leader can prevent dejection from setting in to his praja. And so a good leader can keep the spirits alive. So you should be spirited. Of course, today the word spirits has got multiple meanings, apart from the spiritual form, there's other meanings. So let's not get into that here. And he only sets the path. He sets the light to the path and he leads the way. It's not that he just talks from the behind. He leads the way from the front. That is what is important in all this. So it's a PMG. It's a concept that India has had. India has offered it, and how we can lead the way forward.
It has been a vital mix of India. And this is very interesting. The difference between hope and enthusiasm. Hope is about passivity. So you're just hoping an external agent will make something happen, and you're just hoping that will happen. Whereas in enthusiasm, you are building up strength within yourself to act. So it is about acting. So it is about, again, it's a balance between hope and enthusiasm. You need both. You need to have hope, and you also need to have enthusiasm. So that again is a right balance. You can't have just one without the other. And therefore, in such crisis, the fact that we have had such leaders and we still have amidst us, though they may not be in the kind of garb that we just saw them in the photos before, but we still have amidst us, every civilization has these three leaders. And therefore, the thing to do will be LLL. Look out for them. Who are these kind of people who are playing this role during the time of crisis? Listen to what they're saying and loyally obey what they do, what they are advising. You can be as innovative, but then when a crisis hits, then you have to work with you have to cross over it only with a herd mentality. You have to follow the leader, like the way Moses led the people across the seas. So there has to be a sense of following orders. And the other nice thing is that with every such crisis, there is also a change that is going to follow. Obviously, we all, we can't imagine what it is going to be like after the present COVID crisis, but definitely there is going to be some change. I'm sure everybody sitting in their homes would have realized what their priorities are now, what they can do with, what they cannot. And this kind of change is what causes evolution. And we have a beautiful term for it in Indian thought, which is parinama. Parinam, which is effect. So effect meaning there is a cause as well. So evolution has been seen as a cycle of cause and effect, cycles of causes and effects. And so given that we are going through a crisis, we can also rest assured that there is going to be a change after this crisis, and we can, we should enthusiastically look forward and work towards a change with the hope that it will be a good change.
And important aspect is when all this happens, after you come out of the lockdown, after you come out from the valley or the trough, what do you look to rejuvenate yourself with as an individual, as a family, as a community, as a civilization as a whole? How do you rejuvenate yourself? That's a very important aspect. Rejuvenation, important aspect. And Indian civilization has practiced it repeatedly. In this, we have this classic case of Pralaya. And you have Pralaya is, you link the word with layam, to blend, to merge with, dissolve, to melt. Whereas Pralaya is a special. Pra there stands for special. So you have pressure, special.
And normally the word Pralaya, because the word Pralaya comes when we talk about evolution. We just spoke about Parinama and evolution. So evolution also means that there are cycles. So when you say there is a cycle, there is an up and a down. So there is a low. And the lows have been referred to as the points where there is a meltdown, there is a layam. And there have been 4 kinds of Pralaya that have been spoken about, because as soon as the word Pralaya is uttered, people really get scared about the cosmic Pralaya and the world ending. And but there are 4 kinds. In fact, there is a Pralaya that we undergo every night when we go to bed, and we melt into the different dimension of consciousness. We don't know what has happened to us through our sleep, but when we wake up, we are fresh, so we feel rejuvenated. And similarly, there is a Naimitika Pralaya, which happens due to some certain special events like earthquakes, or for example, there could be a volcanic eruption in the sea, but then you end up with an island much later after that. So everything has a change, is associated with something new that happens after that. You have Avantara Pralaya, which is the season, onset of seasons is like a Pralaya. It's a change. And finally, you have the Mahapralaya at the cosmic levels. Actually, and each one comes up with rejuvenation.
Actually, we have spoken all this Pralaya in our book, Understanding Shiva, and our film, which you can see. You can give a link to it.
I just thought I'll show something.
Oh, Tree of Life. He brought, oh, that's why he went, got up.
Yes, lovely.
So I
I
thought it was very contextual. It is coming to an online store near you. And PGurus viewers.
Tree of Life, we have it in our Indian thought known as Kalpa Vriksha.
Yes.
Also, you have it in the Israeli Jewish thought. In both the civilizations, both the Brahmic and the Abrahamic, both the branches of philosophy, you have this Tree of Life coming into play.
Right. Please continue.
Yeah.
And incidentally, about Pralaya, we have spoken about it extensively in our book, Understanding Shiva, which I'm sure you would have read. And also, YouTube film is available on this, on the concept of Pralaya, which you can add if you want to this.
Sure.
Or it's already done, was available.
We'll put a link to it for sure, yes.
Forward to, when you are going through a Pralaya, is the rejuvenation that is bound to happen, because you're going to rise again. And like in Nitya Pralaya, when you wake up with fresh blood, fresh cells, and a lot of freshness. And thus, even at a cosmic scale, one star dies, so another is born again. And galaxies, everything one goes down and another arises out of that, which is why in our Indian thought, we don't look at Shiva as the god of destruction, which is how he is painted out to be in recent times, but he is the god of regeneration. So while regeneration has an aspect of destruction associated, it has an aspect of rejuvenation, recreating things back again. And that is why he is also called Shiva, because he has the potential to manifest something new again. And at various levels, therefore, you need rejuvenators. And what we have been speaking about as a civilization is that, yes, when you talk about a cycle, it means that you know there is going to be a down. So there is nothing wrong in falling down. But if you don't rise up and if you don't climb up, if you don't take steps to climb up again, then you are in the wrong, because then you are defying the natural process.
That's why it's called Kala Chakra, because you know it's going to have ups and downs in time. And let's look at some of the rejuvenators, that factors that are very inbuilt in the Indian economy. For economy, the first, one of the biggest rejuvenators that we really don't observe is gold. That's why there's a big appetite for gold in the Indian ethos, Indian thought. Because one of the very important rejuvenators is gold. Every time, that's why people keep gold in the house. They bury gold in the backyard of the house, keep it so that for generations to come, it's a rejuvenator for the family. Similarly, grains is a big rejuvenator. The seeds, the bijam, it's a big rejuvenator. That's why you see a lot of seeds being kept in grains, being kept in temples, especially in the temple walls, or more importantly, in the temple gopuram. For example, in the flood or war or fire, something comes. After the event, you get the seeds to rejuvenate the whole agrarian society back. So it was a big rejuvenator for them. Similarly, environment has got two key rejuvenators. One is the water bodies. What happens if you have good water bodies, they rejuvenate the whole economy quickly within a couple of seasons. The other thing is forest. Forest, because it forms a topographical barrier and it's a very good rejuvenator. It arrests many things. It's a good rejuvenator. That's why we had all the sacred vana with us. Every village, every community had a vana associated because they knew it was a rejuvenator. And similarly, look at the personal health. Ayurveda is a good rejuvenator because 80% or so of Ayurveda is all about SWAVRTTI, preventive. So it's a good rejuvenator. And for the mind, you have dhyanam, meditation, which is a rejuvenator. And both of these put together, yoga is the other big rejuvenator. So for the body, mind, soul, environment, economy, everything, we have had the idea of rejuvenators in India. Similarly, rejuvenating factors we have had in knowledge and progress as well, which helps.
And so again, if you look at it, every time you have some major calamity, you will tend to lose out. If you really step back and look, what is it that you will lose out in terms of knowledge? It will be the more recent form of knowledge, the more recently acquired knowledge, which is more nichely held, which is more likely to get lost. And at these times, it is traditional knowledge which acts as a rejuvenator, because this is the knowledge that has been held by a larger spread of people, even in smaller scales, even within their homes. So it is this knowledge that can help rejuvenate the society at these points in time. And coming forward further, as a society, for the human race itself, like we have been speaking about, it is self-sufficiency, which will be a rejuvenator, because it gives you that potential and the capability to stand up once again, to have the strength to go through the calamity and therefore be able to stand up after the calamity is over and to take steps forward. You can say.
Go ahead.
And this self-sufficiency is one of the, okay, so coming back to self-sufficiency, it is the achar and the desachar. So when we say self-sufficiency, what does it mean? It boils down to relying on local capabilities. Now, what is reliance on local capabilities? This is very, very interesting if you see. We have this commonly used word called achar. And achar translates to habits, traditional practices, customs. So these are called achar. And when these achar or habits are very unique to some local regions, then it is called desachar. And when it is common for the entire land and the civilization, then it is called kalachar. Okay. Look at the vichar in this underlying thing. Okay. The thought. What do you mean by desachar? It means now those habits that have gotten fine-tuned and honed to become customs and traditions based on your regional topography, your climate, your surroundings, and the kind of people who live in that region. And that is what, if you see, self-sufficiency all about. It is learning how to depend on your local resources, knowing your locality and being in tune with your local surroundings. So finding your local self is what desachar is all about. So while on one side we may talk about it as something just tradition and just habits, but these are just reflections of what people have been practicing as self-sufficient practices to keep them self-sufficient in their local community. And that brings us to, therefore, what helped India practice this self-sufficiency? How was India enabled to be self-sufficient? And if you see that, in earlier system, it was a decentralized form of administration before the British came over. And we had the Panchayat Raj. And what it meant was every village would generate its produce, its wealth, trade it, generate wealth, and deploy the wealth themselves, within themselves, for whatever they thought was important to them from their local perspective. And a small portion of it was shared with the king of the land. Whereas in post the British, and even to this day, whatever is generated at the smallest scale in the villages goes all the way up to one common central administrative body. From there, it is decided and then sent back all the way down, which is a form of decentralized administration. Holds good for smaller bodies of nations or communities, but for something as diverse and large as India, this was not the model which was a native model for us.
So we need to have, the Indian thought, always be decentralized, whereas the British administration has been centralized, because for them it was important to collect taxes, because they were collectors. That's why the district administrator was known as collector, because his job was not to administer but to collect the taxes. Unfortunately, even after 70 years, we still have the term collector. So that speaks of the mindset about the person.
I think this slide might be perhaps one of the most important slides, even though it has got nothing to do with staying alive. But I think you are showcasing a very critical problem that India suffers from today. And we will come to this in our question and answer sessions. Please proceed.
Yeah, but actually, you know what? It is to do with everything to do with staying alive.
Because only if you're decentralized, you can stay alive better. Centralization has got problems in longevity of staying alive. That's a fundamental issue. And we have dealt with this in detail in two of our books. One is U-Turn India, and the other book is Breaking the Myth About Prosperity, and also Knowing New India. So this is, we have repeatedly dealt with it because it needs an amount of dealing with.
And actually, we'll come back to this slide a little later, because since you have raised the point about, okay, we'll go through it. So, does India have it in her to be self-sufficient, if you ask? So look at the essentials, your water, your foods, goods. So you have enough rain.
Actually, if you look at the rainfall pattern of the world, the Amazon region gets the highest rainfall in the world. After Amazon region, it's the Indian subcontinent which gets the second most abundant rainfall in the world. So we get the rainfall, we have the river flow, and we have the water holding capacity this land has. So that is the essential factor for rejuvenating, and we have that in abundance. It's nature provided abundance and built by mankind, by the civilization of the last 5,000, 7,000 years. We have over 9,50,000 water bodies, built in India. Mind you,
Man-made water bodies.
Man-made water bodies, over 9,50,000 water bodies, not built in the last 50, 70 years, but by over the last 5,000, 7,000 years. Okay, and if you look at India, we have only 6 lakh villages in India. So it's only 6 lakh pin code. There are 6 lakh villages in India. What does it say? A story. For 6 lakh villages, we have 9 lakh 50,000 water bodies. That means we have more water bodies in India than villages. So the people thought it fit than have habitation to have more water bodies because they were the real prosperity providers. Yes, sir.
So I have read, I think perhaps in Rajiv Malhotra's speeches, that the British tried to centralize water also, in the sense that the way it was built before was during rainy season, the excess water that was flowing from rivers, they had these tributaries that they could open like a duct, a sluice that they would open, and they would take the excess water and take it off into what I would call as auxiliary storage reservoirs. India had that system, and
yes,
all those
it is
things
mentioned. Yes, in 2 of our books, it's very clearly mentioned. You can read in detail. No, it's there also in our film, in our short film. It's very clearly there. You can see it. It is these water bodies, this 9 lakh 50,000 water bodies, which drew water from the distributaries of these rivers, and there was a parallel river system of India. That was the beauty of it, and it was a water harness system built by the people, not necessarily by the kings or the governments alone. So mostly people built, and every king. It is today that you have this big habit of putting up statues for everybody, no? Whereas those days they did not put up statues. Whereas a king, if he wanted to be a father figure for his people, he built a water body. He built a water harness system. So he will be remembered across centuries through that than through a statue which has got a lot less life. It is only in the English era that we have got this habit of putting up statues which don't have much life, for no purpose.
In fact, a lot of canals in South India were built by these kings. A lot of things by the Cholas and Pallava kings, and also the step wells. Many of the step wells,
Baulis,
they were all built by those local chieftains and local builders
with the local people's help. So this we have dealt with very detailed in our book U-Turn India, and in our book Breaking the Myths about Prosperity, because India was a prosperous nation because of this. We dealt with it. You can see it there.
And so look at it. Every local region of India, to whatever scale you want to look at it, as a village or as a district, you had enough water within that place. Today, don't compare it with what you have today, because many of them are in disrepair. But statistically, we had for every of these regions, depending on their topography, that form of local storage. And we know all of India, we have enough sunshine through the year, and every region has its own form of local resources, naturally growing resources, and enough manpower, skillable manpower. Today we are skilling them and sending them all over the world. So which means that there are skillable people in every local region. So all of which is there to give you your self-sufficiency. And this was what India had. And look at this acknowledgement coming from Sir Charles T. Metcalfe. I'll just read this out to you. The village communities are little republics, having nearly everything they want. They seem to last where nothing else lasts. Dynasty after dynasty tumbles down. Revolution succeeds revolution. Hindu, Pathan, Mughal, Maratha, Sikh, and English are all masters in turn, but the village community remains the same. In times of trouble, they arm and fortify themselves. A hostile army passes through the country. The village communities collect their cattle within their walls and let the enemy pass unprovoked. If plunder and devastation be directed against themselves and the force employed be irresistible, they flee to friendly villages at a distance, but when the storm has passed, they return and resume their occupations. There are so many things that we can learn from this one record of Sir Charles T. Metcalfe. I mean, it's just amazing. You know, we really have to thank him to.
When did he write this? When did he write?
This was 1830s.
1832. This
Okay.
he said this in the report to the House of report of Select Committee to the House of Commons, page 331, Appendix 84, Volume 3. I can't get more precise than this, sir.
And he says,
I guess I was jumping the line here.
union.
Pardon?
I guess I was jumping the line here. Go ahead.
No, and he says this union, I'll explain it point by point, but I'll just state this before going there. This union of the village communities, each one forming a separate little estate in itself, as I conceive, contributed more than any other cause to the preservation of the people of India through all the revolutions and changes which they have suffered, and is in a high degree conducive to their happiness and to the enjoyment of a great portion of freedom and independence. So when you say staying alive, the preservation of the people of India, he's saying, is because of this structure, local community,
Panchayats,
the structure
DHARMA
of the village, the ethos of their practice of self-sufficiency. Because what he says, see, dynasty after dynasty tumbles down, the Hindu, Pathan, Mughal, each of them become succeeding rulers of the village, but the village community remains the same, and they always seem to last, they seem to be in flourish. And he says about two things, okay? One, in times of trouble, either they fortify themselves and they, withdraw into their walls and wait for the trouble to pass over, or they flee to neighboring villages and then they come back again and resume their activities. Now, two things over here, again, that we can learn. One is, even though the Hindu and Pathan and Maratha and Sikh, they were wars fought amongst themselves where each one became the ruler for brief periods of time, the ethics with which the war was fought was common, in that they did not disturb the village communities, the common man. Yes.
So I'm just casting my mind back. Gandhiji always said that India lived in its villages, and somehow that vision of his didn't find acceptance in the post-independent India. What went wrong?
See, post-independent India, what happened? Because we adopted this so-called alien failed economic model of socialism imposed on us. We did not take the Indian model, which was a successful model for many millennia. That was the fundamental reason that our development was delayed by many decades. Because we have written about this clearly in our book, Breaking the Myths About Prosperity, where we said we adopted alien failed model and imposed it on India, because of which we were stuck for decades. Because the enthusiasm that we had after independence, immediately after independence, if we had adopted a native successful model, we'd have come back to prosperity in a more holistic manner a few decades earlier.
Actually, very sadly, we adopted eradication of poverty as the theme for going forward, rather than generation of prosperity as the theme. And we adopted generation of prosperity as the focus, then poverty anyway would have automatically got eradicated.
Our focus itself was different. This we have brought out in our book, U-Turn India, very clearly. We have said this without mincing any words.
I'm just thinking, if democracy had prevailed in 1946 in that fateful Congress Working Committee meeting, and Patel had become the first Prime Minister, I can see an alternate universe that could have happened to India, where he would have been followed by probably Rajaji as the Prime Minister, and he also was aligned in the same way. This was the wing in Congress which was more truer to India's roots rather than the other side. Regrettably, even Subhash Chandra Bose was a socialist, but please continue.
Yes.
Yes. So going on next point.
So this is again another
the
expansion of
this person. I'm sure you must be aware of him, Bishop Caldwell.
Oh yes, for all the wrong reasons. But please go ahead. Yeah. For all the wrong reasons, please go ahead.
He's observed as he was keen observer. He observed that it was a village communities that was the strength of the land. He's also observed this. And Madras Corporation or Chennai Corporation, the building where it housed is called the Ribbon Building,
Yes,
the white
yes.
building. So it is this Ribbon who again reports about the village communities being republics having everything and they last where nothing else lasts. So that was the strength of India civilization, and it was that showed it was a very bottom-up approach. It was not a top-down approach. Whereas
Right.
a centralized approach is a top-down approach, whereas a native Indian approach has been a bottom-up approach.
Where you had the physical strength at the local bodies. So the smaller units were physically strong and self-sufficient, and the larger central idea and the central body was strategically powerful. So that was how the power was, devolved in the earlier idea of.
Let's take a just a quick segue. I have a question. Now, I'm just casting my mind back to how the panchayat system was in vogue probably till about late 70s or early 80s, where you had the village munsif, you had the village karanam, and this karanam was a title given to somebody who kept notes, and you also have similar words like kulkarni and so on and so forth. So all over India you had similar names, and yet in the late 70s, in the name of creating jobs, you have all these people like village administrative officer and so on and so forth, and these people are being paid by the government, and essentially the work is still being done, or at least at that time was still being done by the munsifs and the karanams, because they were not taking any money. They were just protecting what was the village. They knew the friction points, they knew the egos that needed to be stroked in times of conflict, and so on and so forth. So I wonder if, supposing tomorrow Modi decides that India needs to go back to living in its villages, where would he start?
Okay, good point. Have you seen our short film that we made on the Uttaramerur inscription?
Uttaramerur inscription, I have heard of that.
The short film that we made.
No, I have not seen
the short film that we made for the Podige channel.
No, I have not seen that. If you could maybe send the link to that, I'll add.
It is there in our YouTube channel. It is there in our YouTube channel. You can see it. I'll also send you the link. There we deal with it extensively.
Go ahead.
Inscription, where it speaks about how the whole election system at the panchayat level worked. Not now, 1,000 years back at the times of Parantaka Chola.
Understood.
And how it was an effective system, and who can stand for election and who cannot stand for election, and how corruption was totally not there at all because of the rules. Okay, that apart. So that is
to address the question that you asked, where to start. See, fundamentally, you actually said the right thing. I mean, you gave the clue. You said that the people at the local bodies are currently being paid by the central body to administer the local body. The day you change it to a model where these people are paid by funds generated within the local body itself, as per priorities that they define locally and jointly, that is when the system will change.
That is a key point. And this is there in our book, U-Turn India, with the whole code. You can see that. And most importantly, it has to be, the local body should not be elected based on politics. It should be apolitical.
And look at these three words, and the next couple of slides actually will throw some more light on this panchayat system. A small thing that we have missed out so far,
See, there are three words you have here, one called Swarajya, Swatantra, and SWAVRTTI. Let's look at these three words. Swarajya is self-rule. We got this in 1947. Then we call ourselves a Swatantra Desh. What is Swa means self. Tantra is technique. Are we applying our indigenous techniques? Unfortunately, no. We are employing alien, discarded, invalid techniques on India.
See, Swatantra actually, in a larger sense, it denotes freedom, free. And free for what? Free thinking. So free thought. and free thinking. That is the freedom it's supposed to imply. So you're free to apply your thought, your indigenous techniques, your indigenous thought practices.
Native ideas.
But then we are not doing that. So are we really Swatantra? We are independent in terms of governance.
Swarajya, but not yet Swatantra.
And from there, the next thought, evolving thought will be SWAVRTTI. So why do you apply your indigenous techniques? What do you want to achieve with these indigenous techniques? You want to achieve self-sufficiency. You want to be, you don't want to be dependent on somebody else, because then again you defeat. You don't have independence. The moment you're not self-sufficient, you're then dependent. So it defeats freedom. It defeats the idea of independence. So if you do not have Swatantra and you do not have SWAVRTTI, which is self-sufficiency, are you really independent? Do you really have freedom? Have you really gained freedom? Will be the question. And that takes you to the point of what were all these Panchayat Raj all about? Or what were all these village bodies all about? What were they administering? Okay, you may have had this man, that man, or this so many people within those panchayats. But fundamentally, you do not have them just to administer people. You have them to manage the village towards a goal, and that goal was being self-sufficient. That goal was being able to sustain, to be alive as a village, as a community, to look after the people of the village, to make sure nobody goes hungry, everybody has a livelihood, because it's essential to be able to have an occupation and a livelihood, as it is essential for your health, which is where we started. Food and exercise activities both have to be balanced. So you cannot just say, I have enough wealth and money and just live a very life of decadence. You have to be active enough to ensure that your health is good. So all of these are so integrated. So the Panchayat Raj, if it's just for administration, is of no good. It has to have a goal of self-sufficiency. And that is when you really are independent. So if you look at staying alive as an integrated thought, it is not just staying alive from a health epidemic. Health is related to occupation. Occupation is related to being self-sufficient. Self-sufficient is related to administration. So it is all network. There are a number of gears that work together and drive one another. And that actually has been the character, the dharma of the Indian civilization. These kind of republic, panchayats and janapadas have been the dharma or the nature of the Indian civilization. Because people normally talk about dharma in connection with religion, or even sometimes with spirituality. But dharma, in a sense, it means a characteristic trait. So the trait that anything bears. So a man has a dharma, an ant has a dharma of running around, collecting food, keeping it, storing it, and eating it. The tiger has a dharma. The sun has a dharma of emanating, radiating light and heat energy. The earth has a dharma of going around the sun. Everything has a dharma, living or non-living. It essentially comes from the word to bear. What is it that you bear as your trait, as your principle? And fundamentally, while the dharma for everything else kind of stays fixed, for humans, because of this man, the dharma has, it takes on different meanings when they play different roles. So as a father, you have a dharma, duty, a role that you have to play. As a son, you have a different character that you have to trait, that you have to display. As a husband, a different. As a king, a different. So these, and therefore, we have had the need to have leaders like PMGs to show us the right path and the right conduct. And that, what India did was to help, because ultimately we see that it is this balance that has to be maintained. And these aspects of dharma, where you have to decide at what level you have to be playing, that helps you make the right choice when you are faced with this kind of a balance. And it has to be a balance between what is traditional, what is modern. The question of modern, again, is it the right or wrong, or is it meaning a fad? So what do you call as modern? Is it just something that is right always, or is it just something that denotes a fad versus traditional, or ancient versus recent, making a choice between something that's proven and something that has to be a pioneering solution enough as well, making a choice between that which denotes stagnation versus a choice that denotes evolution and going forward. But at the root of it all, we have always made choices that have been aligned towards nature, that have been aligned towards establishing harmony in the society, and also with the other creatures of the universe, as well as being sustainable enough. So these are some of the fulcrums, in the balances of choices that we have made so far, and which has ensured that we have stayed alive so far as well. And which is the kind of perspective we will have to develop, the mindset we have to develop in order to stay alive longer. If you see, it is drawing a line between what is mental, sentimental, containment, and contentment. They're all aspects of the same thing, but there is a fine line of difference between what is containment and what is contentment. And survival and sustenance. You can survive, but will you sustain? So again, there is a fine line. So these are things that we have to be very sensitive towards if we really want to stay alive as a civilization for long. Because you asked earlier about health and our health crisis man-made, and I said yes, because virus is another creature of the universe. And if man is becoming like a virus to the environment, then the virus is going to become like an antibody, and it's a form of check by the nature itself to ensure that the virus called human is destroyed.
I'd like to say something here, which you have written in your book, Future from India, Brand Bharat, Volume 5, about an eco model. Okay, and what we say there is, how do you say something is a virus? Something that propagates a lot and acts very intensively in a very small area, and the way it acts, it destroys what it lives on. These are some of the fundamental factors of a virus. Are not the same, these same things that a man does. He propagates very fast. He lives in a very limited area, and very intensive. He exploits that area, Mother Nature in that area, very intensively. So if you look at it in that way, man is a virus himself. In contrast, I'll take another animal, one of the largest animal on earth, the elephant. Elephants are voracious eaters that we all know, and they roam around in forests. Have you ever heard an elephant destroying a forest or eating away a forest? Never. Even though they are voracious eaters and they live in large herds in forests, they never eat away their forest. So they are not intensive, whereas they are extensive. They are extensive eaters. So they don't destroy the area they live in, whereas humans are not so. For that, if you look at the thing, if you look at an elephant dung, you'll see it's a lot of undigested food. The straw is also there, everything is there. That means what? So it helps in rejuvenation of the local area back again. So it contributes back to the rejuvenation area. So an elephant,
it goes through a long corridor. It doesn't keep eating in the same place. It keeps eating and moving and moving and moving. It doesn't come back to the same place for quite a while. So that gives nature in that spot to rejuvenate and blossom once again.
So an elephant is more understands nature and knows how to keep nature rejuvenated for its own goodness, whereas man is more intensive, more exploitative, and is more akin to a virus.
Nice simile there. Yeah.
This we have dealt with a full chapter in our book Future from India, as to how India can teach this as a simile for the world, as to how we should be non-intensive and
in our industrial
practice and non-exploitative. So we call it an eco model between economy and ecology.
Very nice.
We should be, today we are economically profitable and we try to be ecologically friendly, whereas we should be ecologically viable and economically friendly. The scale should be the other way around. For us to stay alive across decades, across centuries. But this exploitativeness cannot take us far. Because man is a virus.
Economy is not the only form of wealth, which we all are coming to understand.
Ecology is a real. Actually, you can look at a book, Future Familiar. It has got this, a full chapter on this.